Franchise players are often referred to as the face of the franchise.
Welcome into a brand new edition of Franchise Players here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson. I'll be here with you for the next hour, giving you the lowdown on whatever's going on in the world of sports from the best beat writers, coaches, athletes, players, and whatnot from around the area. You can catch us 5 p.m. every Friday afternoon on WWBG, 1470 AM out in Guilford County, Greensboro area, and TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. 6 p.m. you can hear it on WTOB 980 AM and 96.7 FM in Forsyth County, the Winston-Salem area. So across the entire triad, we're here with you every Friday afternoon, getting you ready for your weekend. Starting off, we've got from The Athletic, beat writer Brendan Marks. I'm sure has been super busy with ACC basketball going on, spring football about to start, March Madness right around the corner. Brendan, what's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, absolutely. Yeah, busy is an understatement, as you know, but that's okay. It's this part of the job.
So I've been meaning to talk to you for a bit now. I'm rocking the Carolina sweatshirt right now, but I'm feeling a certain way about my Tar Heels. After falling to Miami on Monday night, it feels like the Tar Heels have run out of road, so to speak. How close are they to missing the postseason right now?
Too close.
Yeah.
Too close if you're a North Carolina fan. Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest with you, at this point, Bart Torvik's bracketology site gives North Carolina less than a 50% chance. So worse than a coin flip's odds of getting in as an at-large team right now. And the good news, I think, if you're a North Carolina fan, is that you mentioned road is running out, and it is, but there is still a little bit left. North Carolina does still have 2 more opportunities for quad 1 games. Obviously is going to NC State on Sunday and then is going to have Virginia at home. Both of those are opportunities to really boost the resume. And between those 2 games and obviously the regular season finale against Duke, to me, if North Carolina doesn't win at least 2 of those games, you're looking at going into the ACC tournament with work needing to be done. And obviously that's a precarious position. You don't know what matchups are going to be. This team has had a trouble with consistency and turning things around quickly. So, it's not looking great if you're a North Carolina fan, but there is still a little bit of hope that there's time to turn things around.
I think a lot of people thought that that Larry Nance would just plug in as like a Brady Manick replacement and we would just keep trucking the way that we were. I never really bought the preseason number 1. I thought that they could be a really good team, but I didn't forget what they did last year. And it was basically the same core, like it was almost – it was like, is this team going to magically turn the corner? Because I saw people trying to compare it to 2016, 2017, and I didn't fall in that trap because I was like, well, that team was built different. Like, they actually shared the ball. They could shoot 3. They were doing things in 2016 that I figured would carry over, and the players would get better, and they did. Justin Jackson got better. Joel Berry got better. Theo Pinson got better. I don't know if the core 4 from that Iron 5 that stayed, Armando, Caleb Love, RJ Davis, and Leakey, I don't know if they're actually better than they were last year. In some instances, they're far worse, especially like 3-point shooting. Is there, if you could point to one thing that's caused Carolina to play this way all season, what would it be in your mind?
It's that right there. It's 3-point shooting. Yeah. And, I think, you sort of touched on it. That was my biggest concern about this team going into the season. And, not to pull receipts, but I've gone back and I've looked at my articles from July, when after Pete Nance signed, and it's like, okay, it's great to have these guys coming back. It's great to have experience. As we know, experience usually wins out in modern college basketball. But at the same time, that was a major part of North Carolina's identity last year. And that was how this team was able to punish different ball screen coverages, especially during the tournament. Teams would hard hedge them. And it was basically, okay, we're going to play hot potato until we get the ball to Brady Manick.
Yeah.
And once we, I don't know if people understand quite how much of a cover-up he was. By the end of the last season, Brady Manick was attempting almost 10 3-pointers a game, making about 45% of them. And in terms of, that's not just crazy efficiency, it's crazy volume.
Yeah.
And, you look at like Brandon Miller today at Alabama, and like, he's attempting half that. And he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the country. Like, it is hard to overstate just how essential Brady Manick was to making the rest of the offense flow. because you knew that when you had that threat, defenses are going to have to account for him. It opened up driving lanes for RJ Davis, opened up driving lanes for Caleb Love, opened up space for Armando Bacot inside. And what you've seen this season instead is that without those threats, teams are playing the same ball screen coverage as North Carolina's a high ball screen offense, except then they're basically daring North Carolina to pass the ball back around, because who's that quote unquote open shooter that's going to punish you? It's not Leaky Black. It's not Pete Nance. It's not Caleb Love. And, at times it's RJ Davis, but he's usually the guy who's getting blitzed. So the lack of 3-point shooting has messed up the spacing all around the perimeter, and it has impacted the inside too. Teams sag off and they just double and triple team Armando Bacot. They're not going to let him beat them. And as a result, North Carolina's been losing more games than it probably should have.
Carolina and Duke beat writer for The Athletic, Brendan Marks, joining us here on Franchise Players. Yeah, I agree with all that. It's almost like they refuse to adjust. It's like, and maybe it's because Hubert is a shooter, and shooters are always taught, well, to get out of a slump, you got to shoot. You got to keep shooting to get out of it. So he's not going to be the type to tell Caleb Love, hey, man, why don't you start driving to the bucket more? Or maybe he is, and Caleb's just not doing it for a full game, because they will have, like in the Miami game, it's a perfect example. First half, they're driving to the paint. They're getting it to Armando. They're doing what you want to do. They feel like a team that needs to drive and kick out, as opposed to just coming down, dribble, and shooting a 28-foot three-pointer, which is a lot of times what it breaks down to, where they don't even get the ball in Bacot's hands at all. It feels like that, but I don't know if there's enough time for them to switch this around. And I would imagine some of these guys aren't going to be here next year. I'd imagine this might be Caleb Love's last ride, I would think. Although the way he's played, I don't know where he could go.
At this point, it's I understand what you're saying, and I think the dichotomy of the two halves in Miami was a really good example. Is that in the first half, North Carolina was driving and they were kicking out, and they weren't making a ton of threes, but they were driving and they were getting to the rim and finishing effectively there. And even though Armando Bacot wasn't necessarily scoring inside, you were getting points in the paint. You were getting good attempts. In the second half, though, Miami changed. Miami started hard hedging ball screens, and they started basically saying, look, we are going to make you shoot threes to beat us. And if you hit those shots, great. We will accept our loss and we will go home. But we don't think that you are going to be able to make enough threes to beat us. And guess what? They didn't. That has been the calculus for every opponent North Carolina has played for most of this season. You go back to that 4-game losing streak earlier in the season against the first 4 high major teams they played. Teams are playing them the same way defensively. They are not going to let Armando Bacot beat them. And, as far as adjusting, there are some things you can do, but I don't know that this is a shooting slump. This is just the way this team is. They're on pace to be, as of right now, if the season finished today, they'd be the second worst 3-point shooting team in North Carolina history, behind only the Cole Anthony year that ended because of COVID-19.
Oh, God.
So it's not good company to be in. And so that has been some regression from guys. Caleb Love is down. He was at 36% last year. He's barely at 30% this year. But at this point, this is the way the roster is built. This is the way that Hubert Davis has designed the offense. This is the way that he wants to play. And right now, the personnel just doesn't exactly match the scheme. So, yeah, I'll be fascinated to see what they're able to do over these next couple of games. I think really defensively is where they have an opportunity to make a difference. They've been like one of the best defensive teams in conference play. I think they're third in Ken Palm's adjusted ACC rankings. Mm-hmm. But the offense hasn't been there right now. And so, yeah, looking forward, where does Caleb Love go? Our Sam Vecini just dropped a mock draft today that did not include Caleb Love in the first or second round. I don't believe that is an uncommon sentiment at this point. You have a high volume, low efficiency 6'4" point guard who doesn't necessarily have great vision. It's not a tremendous sell to NBA teams at this point, and it's sad because that's what Caleb came back to do. Came back to improve his stock, and if anything, the opposite of that has happened.
Yeah, I was gonna say he might have heard it the way he's played this year, and I feel bad for him because he's a shooter. Like this is all he knows. So I think it was a couple weeks ago when they played. It was either Notre Dame or someone where his dad was interviewed right before, and he was like, "He's going to drive today." Like they already know. Like it's been spoken a number of times with him, but then there's just times he just kind of doesn't do it. Let's go 8 miles down the road to Durham. Duke defeated Notre Dame on Tuesday night with Coach K in attendance, actually in Cameron, sitting front row beside the bench with his wife Mickey. I have to admit, Coach K looked miserable for most of that game. Watching that game, I don't know if it's because maybe his back was hurting, or he just didn't like sitting where he was sitting, or he didn't like. It's almost like me. I'm so used to driving the car. I hate it when my wife drives and I have to sit in the passenger side. Not that I don't trust her. It's just I'm used to being the driver. So like I'm used to having the control. And that was the look that it felt like it was on his face Tuesday with everything going on. How confident are you in this Duke roster away from Cameron going forward?
Whew. Away from,
Yeah.
not nearly as confident as I am when they're at Cameron. You know, the splits have really been Jekyll and Hyde like. I mean, it has been that, you know, different between when Duke is playing at home and when Duke is away, especially shooting the ball. So, you know, this is a team you look at them and you say, yes, they're improving. Yes, they're still getting better. That's something that, you know, I think Duke can say that North Carolina can't right now, is that they're still improving and finding ways to win. The thing that if you're a Duke fan, I think you try to take confidence in is the fact that Dariq Whitehead is back, and that Dariq Whitehead at this point in the season has bumped himself almost to being a 40% three-point shooter. And so I do think that that calculus can sort of change what Duke's ceiling is. You know, if he's able to hit like that, suddenly you have to start accounting for him in those corners. You have to account for him and Jacob Grandison, and that's going to open up space that at times hasn't been there for Kyle Filipowski inside. So it is a wait and see sort of deal for me. I need to see Duke on the road a few more times. I need to see them have success on the road before I'm, you know, fully confident about what they're capable of going into conference play. But let's not forget, Duke does have some neutral court experience from earlier when they were out in Portland at PK 85. They've played on a neutral court and had success before. Beat Xavier out there. It's probably their best win of the season. But yeah, it's certainly two different ball clubs right now when you're looking at what they do at Cameron and what they do outside of it.
It kind of feels like, I was thinking about this earlier this morning, actually. College basketball as a whole, it feels like a different sport to me on the other side of COVID. Like, I was talking to David Glenn last week about this, where it feels like 2019 was the peak in terms of that form of college basketball, the one and dones, the stars. That was the Zion year, Cam Reddish, RJ Barrett. Carolina was loaded, Kobe White, Cam Johnson. Like, I mean, there was guys that ended up going in the first round of the NBA scattered throughout the ACC. Virginia won the whole thing that year. DeAndre Hunter, guys like that. This year, it feels like it's kind of devoid of star power on that level. But I'm trying to figure this out, because I'm trying to wrap my mind around who's the team that everyone's gunning for. And when you bring it back down to a microscope view of the ACC, who do you have winning the league right now? Because the top four teams are not teams that I think many of us really picked to be there at the beginning of the year. And it looks like they're going to be the ones that are kind of sitting there right now. They kind of look like they're going to be the ones that get that double bye. Who do you have winning the ACC regular season as it stands right now?
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of two teams, and one of them nobody definitely saw coming, and that's Pitt. I think they were picked 14th in the preseason, and
yeah, amazing.
I mean, you can basically go ahead and give Jeff Capel the ACC Coach of the Year award right now,
yep.
Especially if they do win the league and they have a favorable schedule. The other one that I think has a really good shot to win the league is Virginia still. You know, picked third in the preseason, brought back their entire starting five from last year. I think the thing that is the phenomenon, if you will, that you're describing is one that is hard for myself to get around, like to grapple with, is that the ACC just isn't very good right now. Yeah. And the ACC wasn't great last year outside of Duke. Like right now, if you're a college basketball fan, you know who you're watching? You're watching the Big 10. You're watching the Big 12. You're watching the SEC.
Yeah.
You know, that's where the best teams are coming from. You know, you've got the Alabamas of the world. You've got the Kansas. I mean, the Big 12 race right now, every single night in the Big 12, you've got ranked games on ranked games on ranked games, and the ACC just doesn't have that right now. And certainly I think like college basketball in the whole still has star power. It's just not in our neck of the woods like we're used to seeing. And so it's different for sure. I'm not saying it can't get back to that point, but certainly we're going through, you know, a period of transition right now. And it sort of makes you wonder, like, are we going to get back to that, you know, 2019 stacked team? You know, I remember watching that ACC tournament semifinal between Duke and Carolina. Zion was the best. It was up until the Final Four last year. It was the best Duke Carolina game I'd ever seen. You had 6 first rounders on the floor at the same time. 4 guys who went in the top like 11 picks. So when are we going to
waste on the sidelines? Like, I don't know when it's going to get back to that annually. You know, like we were treated last year at the end of the year. No one could have called what was going to happen after Carolina got blown out by Wake last year, that the run that they would go on, and seeing Duke twice and the way all that happened. But I don't know if they can get back to that. Now, granted, this is year 2 of Hubert, year 1 of John Shire. And I keep coming back as a Carolina fan to, well, these aren't Hubert's kids. Like, these are still Roy's kids. Like, he didn't recruit. I mean, he helped recruit them, but these were Roy's guys that he brought in. You're not going to really start seeing Hubert's kids coming in until next year. Simeon Wilcher and those guys coming in here. So, Jalen Washington, some of the guys that are on the bench right now that aren't really getting a lot of playing time because of the guys in front of them that kind of stayed. I think COVID's what really affected the ACC more than anything in terms of personnel, guys staying a year later, so that messes up recruiting a little bit, guys transferring, guys coming in, coming out. So it's hard to keep track of where everybody is. I say all that because Duke has college basketball's first general manager, and you wrote an article about this for The Athletic. More schools may start to follow the model. Can you explain quickly the role of a college GM?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fascinating idea, I think. And essentially the idea is this. Coaches now have more to deal with than they've ever had before. So right now, John Shire, in his first season as a head coach, is dealing with a number of things that Mike Krzyzewski in 42 seasons at Duke never did. So number one, he has to deal with name, image, and likeness, which is something that obviously for the bulk of Coach K's career was not an issue. He also has to deal with extra eligibility still stemming from COVID-19. It means that college basketball has gotten older than it's ever been. Experience and age have never been more valuable than they are right now. And the third thing is the passage of the NCAA one-time transfer rule has meant that you can get old quickly. You don't have to stay young. And so that's two tremendous things that impact roster construction. Something else that impacts roster retention, recruiting, etc. And basically the idea is that if you're a college basketball coach, that is a lot to deal with. It does not involve basketball. And so the goal of Duke bringing on a GM, Rachel Baker, she was formerly with Nike, formerly with the NBA, has worked in some growth equity firms before, is you bring in someone who allows the coach to focus more on coaching and who can deal with some of those additional outside responsibilities that have cropped up. So Rachel, for example, deals primarily with Duke's name, image, and likeness. So she's the person who is dealing with that in two separate ways. She's dealing with it at the broad 30,000 foot lens. So that means, okay, I'm going to the Duke Athletics, I'm going to meet the king, and I'm saying, how do we want to approach NIL as a department? You know, how close to the edge do we want to push? How much do we want to push this envelope? What are things that we are comfortable with? What are things we are not comfortable with? She's implementing program-wide policy that way. But what she's also doing is working on a much more specific level with Duke's players. And that guy's coming to her and saying, hey, I have this offer on the table. How should I approach it? Do you think this is good for me? Am I being ripped off? And Rachel, one of the things that I think is so cool is her experience working in growth equity. She had to learn how to write and read contracts. And so when guys are coming to her, they can show her those and she can say, look, this right here, this is no good. Or this right here, yeah, they're giving you a pretty good deal. Wow. So I think it's an incredibly valuable position in that respect. And the other thing is that impacts recruiting. As she told me, and it's in the story that came out today, the number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 thing that recruits want to ask about when they come in is, what's your NIL policy for me? You know, what opportunities are going to be available for me? And so it's a huge benefit to John. It frees him up, you know, sort of lets him put blinders on so he can just focus on basketball. She can take some of that off the court stuff away and keep Duke coming along. So I think you're going to continue to see these programs, you know, the elite of the elite proliferate with these positions. It's something that, you know, we'll see. I think the rules will continue to change and expand, but it's something that moving forward, you're going to continue to see more of. It's sort of a must-have hire for any program that wants to be elite in modern college basketball.
I'm surprised Duke's the only one that has it at this point. I'm sure there's going to be Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas, all the, like you said, the blue bloods will probably do it. And then even, you know, like NC State, it makes perfect sense for them to have someone like that in that position, with Kevin Keats kind of growing that program out to new heights this past year. Keep an eye on NC State. I was very impressed with them playing Carolina a couple weeks ago. Carolina's got to see them Sunday in Raleigh. That'll be an interesting game there. State coming off a loss themselves. So who knows what's going to happen over the weekend. We'll keep an eye on it. If anything, this Carolina team and this Duke team to a certain extent, I think they're going to keep us entertained to the end of the year. I don't think it's a NIT situation for Carolina, but they are going to have to win like pretty much every game left.
Yeah, I would actually push back on that. It's looking, I mean, it won't be an NIT situation because they won't accept an NIT bid. But like, yeah. I mean, I cannot emphasize enough how realistic the possibility is that North Carolina is not playing in the NCAA tournament. And no preseason number one team since the tournament expanded in the mid 80s has ever had that happen. So, I mean, it's like historic company that they are like, it would be a historic season of ineptitude for a preseason number one to not make it. And that is very much on the table right now.
You know, and I'll get you out of here on this. If someone asked me last year after the Wake Forest blowout, hey, if you could beat Duke and Coach K in Cameron on his final home game, and then see them again 4 weeks later in the Final Four and beat them there, would you take that in exchange for a really bad season the next year? And I'd be like, yeah, I'd take that. I would take that. I'd be just fine. So I think that's why I've been kind of cooling like all year. I'm like, this is karma for what we did last year. The heavens are trying to even it out or whatever. So it's fine. Follow Brendan on Twitter at Brendan R. Marks. The Athletic, definitely go there. Read all of his work. Football is about to come back around the corner. Spring football. He's got a spring football thing up with some other writers from the Athletic there as well. I noticed this morning. So definitely go and check out his stuff if you're a Carolina Duke fan or a college basketball or football fan. Brendan, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Coming up later on in the show, we've got Greensboro Swarm forward Kobe Simmons in our Get to Know Swarm section from All Hornets Sports Illustrated. But coming up next, East Forsyth head baseball coach Drew Dole is going to join us to give us a preview of the season. Of course, you know Tobacco Road is the home of the East Forsyth Sports Network. Coach Dole, he's got 5 or 6 D1 kids coming back to this team. They are loaded, so we'll talk a little bit about them and their expectations for the season. You're listening to Franchise Players here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com.
In professional sports, a franchise player is an athlete who is not simply the best player on their team, but one that the team can build their franchise around for the foreseeable future.
Welcome back to Franchise Players here on WWBG 1470 AM, part of the TGI Friday lineup here at TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. Franchise Players, you can also catch it if you missed it at 5 p.m. You can hear it on WTOB over in Forsyth County, 980 AM and 96.7 FM. Shout out to Southern Broadcasting Media, Bob Scarborough, and all the good fine folks over there. With me right now in Prep Corner, he is the head coach of the East Forsyth men's baseball squad, Drew Dole, joining me. What's going on, brother, man? How you doing?
Not much, just hanging out.
So I wanted to get with you because we were talking off to the side. Of course, Tobacco Road's the home of the East Forsyth Sports Network. You can watch all football games home and away, home basketball, men and women, home baseball. Myself and Chad Delp will be on the call again this year, and some home softball as well. And I don't know if people realize how good the baseball program and the softball program have been the past couple of years over at East Forsyth. Right. You guys have put some talent through the pipeline here. I wanted to start off with where we were at the end of last year. You had this kid. I don't know if I can call him a kid anymore.
No, he's not a kid. That's a man-child.
A grown man in high school named Xavier Isaac. They got drafted in the first round of the Major League Baseball draft. And I remember we were texting back and forth that night while it was going on. Just walk me through that night, being a coach of a kid that gets drafted into a pro league, into Major League Baseball, first round. Did you guys have an inkling that was going to happen, or were you shocked when his name came across the screen?
We had heard some reports, that Tampa Bay had thought that, he was going to be one of their guys. And I've heard some things that, if he hadn't gone late first round, maybe in the supplemental, the next, 15 picks after the end of the first round was very, very possible. San Diego was very, very high on him. And I think they were going to take him in their supplemental pick at 30 or 41, I think, something like that. And so I'm sitting there, and I've got, at this time, my 2-month-old or 1-month-old, I think 2-month-old right in front of me.
Long. Yeah.
Wasn't long. And he's kind of napping, and all of a sudden I'm watching the draft, and I hear Xavier Eyes, and I yell, and there was an expletive at that point, but I yelled, and I looked down, and I was like, oh crap. I woke the 2-month-old up. Luckily for me, it was just about time to feed. So
there it goes.
Mom was not too upset with me. She was kind of still excited about Xavier too. But at that point, my son Alec wasn't he wasn't too upset, but I kind of woke him up. But I mean, it was a whirlwind because my phone goes on like do not disturb at 10 o'clock. So it happened right at 10 o'clock. And next thing I know, I touched my phone and I was scrolling through all the text messages I had. And I mean, it was an unreal moment. I mean, great kid. Had a COVID happen, had an injury in 2021. And, not a lot of people talked about him going into 2022, but we knew something was special with him. And then our first conference game against Reagan, 31 of 32 Major League Baseball teams are on our third base side fence, just having a field day. And he does something Xavier Isaac does. He hits a laser to left center on a ball that never gets higher than the trees in center field and goes out of the ballpark. And everybody's over there just drooling on down that line. Like you could have, like we needed to put some turfus down over there from all the wet mouths and everything that was there. But it's unreal. And he's a great kid, man. He's been back. He was back just last week at one of our last workouts before we started. And
I was about to ask
saw
you,
all the guys. Saw all the guys. And I mean, all the guys always keep up with him. And I mean, the really cool part is he's supposed to start in probably in Charleston, their low A team. And where does Charleston open up? They open up in Myrtle Beach. Where are we playing spring break? We're playing spring break Monday, Tuesday in Myrtle Beach before he opens on Thursday. So I think a lot of our kids are going to hang out after our spring break tournament. I know I am. And I think we're all going to go watch him play his first like professional game, which is really, really cool. But I mean, special kid, special player. We've been blessed the last 2 years in the draft, 2021 with Connor Norby getting drafted in the second round and then Xavier last year in the first round. So it's been pretty exciting to be in our program. I can tell you that.
Connor, he was ripping the cloth off the ball towards the end of the year last year. I felt like every time I got on Twitter, like every 2 days, it would be like Connor Norby hits another home run, and it's like what? And
he led their minor league organization with home runs with 29 last year.
Yeah, so there's talent, and actually, this is a good place to announce it too. Everyone knows we have a series hosted by Ryan Smith called "Where Are They Now?" Triad All Stars. Where Ryan goes and he interviews either current athletes or coaches or former athletes and coaches and reminisce about their times playing, high school sports. We did a whole month for Glenn last month, and this month is all East Forsyth. And I think the first episode just dropped in my email today, and it's Monty Gray, head basketball coach, star basketball player here, early 90s, went to Salem State, and Alex Zumwalt. Former baseball player here that actually was in school when I was here and got to the pros. So keep Zoom
is the hitting coach for the big league Kansas City Royals now too. And I mean, I talk to him when I can. I mean, obviously he's got a very busy schedule, but he's love me some Alex Zumwalt. He's a good dude.
I was surprised that we got him so quickly because I know how busy he is. So he'll be on. We've got Rod Funderburk will be on to talk about the 92 state championship football team. Julie Scott will be on for soccer. My dad, Sherman Johnson, he's going to be on. He was an all-state basketball player in the mid-'70s. One of the first really good teams East Forsyth had when they first opened. So we got it loaded in terms of who we're going to have on that. So keep your eyes peeled on the East Forsyth Sports Network. We'll drop announcements for that as we go. With the head coach of the baseball team over at East Forsyth, Drew Dull, they're getting ready to start their season. Last year, East finished 18-9, 12-2 in conference play. You finished first in the tough Central Piedmont Conference before falling early in the 4A state playoffs to South Mecklenburg. You've got a lot of seniors on this team that were juniors last year. How much does last year and the way it ended affect your team's mentality going into this season? Like, have you used it as a motivator?
It's thought about every day. That's after the game. It was, devastating because we had eyes for a long run. We had eyes on Providence in round 3, big heavyweight matchup. It just chips didn't fall our way. And that's the second year in a row we've lost in the first round. In 2021, we lost to Huff when all these kids were sophomores.
Huff.
And I know we lost. They were the number 1 team in the state. We lost 1-0 in 11 innings. They were a very senior heavy team. And I mean, after the game, their coach was like, dude, you're all sophomores. And all I threw were sophomores that night. So it was a very building moment for the program. We threw Braxton Stewart 6 innings, Ethan Norby threw 4 innings, and then we threw one senior, Cameron Watts. And it's been crazy. And out of these 14 seniors we have, 14. Six, I believe, 6 or 7 of them have been playing on varsity since their freshman year. So they've been around. They know what's going on. Everybody in our conference is probably like, "Oh, great, Xavier's gone. Oh God, all these guys are back again."
Right.
Like, are they ever leaving? Are they? Do they have a
This
COVID
might
year
be,
too? What's
this
going
might be
on here?
worse. Yeah, this
Yeah.
might be even worse than us
Right.
worrying about one kid. Now you're worried about 8 kids.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. I was talking to Alan Plaster, the athletic director at East Forsyth, and we talk all the time. And I was telling him, it made the COVID year, I think, ended up being a blessing in disguise for East Forsyth, because it almost allowed you guys to almost have to reset like every program. Because what you just said, Rod and Coach Willard had the same conversation in August about the football team. The basketball team, like half the basketball team is seniors. The softball team is like half of its seniors. They didn't have a single senior last year except for the number 1 player in the whole country. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost the same, like you guys last year. It was a lot of juniors, and you had a kid that got drafted first round in the MLB draft. And now everyone is back. And I don't know, it just feels like it's kind of something could potentially be there to build to something really special. You were talking to me the other night at the basketball game about the number of kids that you have that have signed D1 scholarships on this roster. Can you tell us some of the kids that have signed and where they've signed?
Well, one's playing basketball right now, Braxton Stewart. And,
Yeah.
He was all conference basketball last year, all conference baseball for the last 2 years. He's going to Louisville. You've got Ethan Norby going to ECU. You've got Steele Lee going to High Point. You got Brett Clements going to App State. And then we have 2 guys going to Division II. Jason Howe, he's going to go to Belmont Abbey. And Hudson Morgan, he's going to go to USC Beaufort.
Wow. That's amazing.
And there's probably 1 or 2 more that might have the opportunity to play that are seniors. There's some juniors that have a chance, and there's some sophomores that have a chance too. So
wow,
the cupboard's not bare. We got a lot of hard work to do, but the cupboard's not bare either.
And again, that goes back to the conversations I've had with Plaster, because whenever I've had other schools that come to me to ask, how can we do what East Forsyth is doing in terms of the broadcasting and all that stuff at Tobacco Road. And I tell them, well, I'm very selective with the schools I pick, because not every school can carry this off. Not every school can have 4 different sports running, broadcasting and knowing they're going to have a dedicated audience. It's different over at East Forsyth in terms of the dedication from the fan base, the alumni, the faculty, the students. I noticed last spring when me and Chad Delp were doing the baseball games and I'm sitting in the booth with them, something that I didn't really see happen at other schools as much. But you see players from other teams come to watch these games. Like, you'll see the football players come in and watch the baseball team. I'd walk up the hill to watch the softball game with JP calling it, and you're seeing basketball players and football players line up at the fence. The football coaches are standing out there watching the games. And you see that across the board for football. All these kids are at the football games. They all support each other. They're all friends, and a lot of these kids play multiple sports. So I can see how easy it would be to do that. But I think that lends to the success, not just for football, but overall. Like, I didn't want to go to a school where football, you know how it is sometimes in some places where football is the king. No other sports get anything. It's all football, football, football. And East could easily be one of those types of schools, but they're not. They're really not. It's probably one of the strongest athletic programs as a whole in the state, to be honest, with the multiple programs, including yours, that are doing so well. In this upcoming season, Drew, who would you say, or what team would you say you're looking at that's the biggest threat to challenge you for the regular season title in the CPC? Because I know it's pretty deep when it comes to baseball.
Yeah, it's very, very tough baseball wise. You always have any given night, anybody in the CPC can beat you. Does not matter who.
Yeah.
I would say Reagan, Davey, West Forsyth, those 3 still very loaded. Reagan's always loaded. Reagan has a lot of guys back that played last year. They don't have the big time arm that they used to, but they have a lot of really, really good arms.
Mm-hmm.
West Forsyth's got 2 Division I arms. One's a Carolina, Harrison Lewis, and then another one, East Tennessee State, Jack Vest. I mean, they're going to be really good. I think, Glenn is Glenn. They're always going to have something for us. It doesn't matter. Throw the records out when East and Glenn play each other. It does not matter.
I noticed that last year. I mean, I know, but I noticed that last year during the East Glenn game when we hosted them at East.
Yes.
That was probably the most vocal audience that I'd seen at the baseball games that whole season. They were quiet by the end of it, but
they poked the wrong bear.
They really did. They really did. I think they're still looking for that baseball.
I got it on video if they want to see it. I mean,
yeah, for those that have no idea what we're talking about, Xavier came up. It was like 2 outs, ninth inning.
It was bottom of the seventh.
We
had bottom of the seventh. We had nobody on base. We're down a run. Little Hudson Morgan. Well, I say little. He's as tall as I am. He used to be littler than me, but he's as tall as I am now. Draws a 4-pitch walk, and I haven't told this part yet, but a lot of the times during the season, I'd go walk up to Xavier, and I'd tell him something. Like at Myers Park, I told him something. He hit a big double. Yeah. I told him something at Reagan. He hit a grand slam. I walked up to talk to him. I said, Xavier, man, this is what you live for, man. East Glen, this is a big moment. I said, you know what? If you hit a ball hard and they catch it, it doesn't matter. I just want you to see if you can hit one hard. And you know what? I said, if you hit it hard, we're probably going to win the game anyways. I said, just do your best, hit it hard, have fun, pat him on the butt, and then about 4 pitches later, he hit one into the trees in right field. And
hold on, before he did that,
yeah, you're right.
Because me and Chad had wired a field mic,
yes,
like down to the cage, because Chad wanted to hear that natural, the ding of the bat and everything.
Sure,
windows don't open that way in the booth, so we ran 100-foot cord out there so we could hear it. And like I think he struck, like he was a strike one or something like that, and it was this one parent in the crowd that was just yelling at him, like, because I think you had Xavier pitch for a couple innings.
I did. He actually got the win in the mount. He came in and got he got 3 outs in the top of the 7th. I think he struck all 3 guys out.
This dude was yelling at him like, "Oh man!"
And if you watch the video, he actually turns around and looks like, "What is this guy saying to me? Are you kidding me?"
And the next pitch from the booth, like literally, like it looked like Xavier was looking up at us, like like the parents like sitting right below us, and we can hear him clear as day. And he's like, "Oh, you're slow. You can't pitch. You can't hit either," and blah 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 blah. And you just see Xavier kind of look at this dude and stare at him for like a hard 3 seconds, and that's a long time to stare at somebody. And then he turns back around, and the very next pitch, he sends a rocket like out to right field, where the Glen bus is parked, like past the Glen bus. Yeah. Like
it landed on the other side of the road. If you go down James Wilhelm Drive, it landed on the other side of James Wilhelm Drive.
And he turned around after he hit it, before he started walking to first base. He just looked at the dude. He just stared the dude down. And we said something about it on the radio. I know Chad said something about it. We were rolling in the in the booth. And he goes around the base, whatever. I was like, that's probably one of the craziest things I've seen in high school baseball, like probably in a long time. But you've got a really talented team for this year coming in, man. We can't wait to get started. Let them know when I know you got scrimmages and stuff coming up here in February, but let them know opening day, first home game, all that good stuff.
So scrimmage, we're going to scrimmage Saturday. We have Rockingham County with my former JV coach, Zach Apple. We'll scrimmage them at 11, and then a top 10 3A team, Orange County. They'll come in and we'll play them at 3. The following weekend, we scrimmage a team out of Virginia called Chatham. They're very, very good. And then we'll scrimmage the number 3 team in 2A, Eden Moorhead, who has the number 1 player in 2024, Anderson Nance. And then we will promptly open with the number 6 team in 4A, Northwest Guilford.
Okay. Is that home or away? That
is going to be at home.
Okay, so we'll be there. We'll be in the house. That's what, March 1st?
February 28th.
Ooh, God, it feels like this gets earlier and earlier, like every year. Because I know softball starts March 1st, I think.
Yeah, they're the following night.
Yeah, and again, they're loaded coming back too. So I'm excited for the spring. When I was a kid at East, spring didn't mean so much. We were more football, basketball than it was like soccer and stuff in the 90s. But like you guys have really turned this thing into something special the past 3 or 4 years in particular, where now I think East is kind of looked at as one of those teams where it's like, keep an eye on them. Like, because you don't shy away from competition too. I like the fact that you're playing some top-notch teams.
We play Huff at home this year too.
Do we? Okay.
Huff at home, Myers Park at home. We have Ledford, who is a 2A or 3A. Sorry, they're number 4 in 3A preseason, so they're coming to the Monk as well. So we don't shy away. I welcome it, because how we're going to get better unless we play competition that's just as good or better than us.
Well, we'll be with you. We'll be with you for the home games. Myself and Chad Delp will be back on the call. You'll be able to hear all these games on East Forsyth Sports Network, powered by TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. I'll just go to TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. You'll be able to see that stuff there, or go to the Facebook page. You'll get announcements from there where we are, where the games are, where to listen to them, and everything else. Drew, brother, always pleasure talking to you, man. Appreciate having you on, and we can't wait to get started. I'm gonna tell Chad that you told him we were gonna go undefeated and
I ain't put that on my name.
I can put that
Not
on
doing
there.
that. Des, I appreciate everything you and Tobacco Sports does for us at East Forsyth and in the high school sports in general, man. That's awesome.
Coming up, I've got an exclusive interview in our Get to Know the Greensboro Swarm series for All Hornet Sports Illustrated. I sat down with Kobe Simmons, forward for the Greensboro Swarm, and got to ask him the real tough questions. See, team drums, team flats, all that good stuff. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty in just a bit. You're listening to Franchise Players here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com.